Sean Spicer is a former White House press secretary and a senior advisor for America First Action PAC, and he joins us now. Sean, good to see you this morning.
Good to see you, Sandra. Thanks for having me.
So what did you make of a very confident Lindsey Graham there?
Well, I think Lindsey Graham is basing his comments on the facts. What you've seen is political speculation by the Democrats as far as what Mr. Whitaker might or might not do. But anyone who's taken the time, like Senator Graham, to actually ask him has gotten the answer that we probably knew was the case to begin with, that Mr. Whitaker isn't going to do anything to impede the wrap-up of this investigation. But I think Democrats understand politically this is all they can talk about, so that they're going to continue to focus on speculation rather than fact.
Still, you're getting the sense there's an eagerness within the president's own party to confirm an AG because of everything going on and it really being a big distraction. We talked to Senator Joni Ernst earlier, and she said this.
We do know that the Attorney General serves at the pleasure of the president, and it is up to the president to determine who serves on his cabinet. So I would love to see him make a nomination, and whoever that nomination is, we will provide advice and consent for the president. But we do want someone that does have integrity and will uphold the law.
So what do you see happening next, Sean?
Well, I think the president's got several months that Mr. Whitaker can stay in an acting position, but my guess is that within the next month or so, he'll continue to meet with some folks that Mr. Whitaker probably included in that group that he thinks will make a long-term candidate. But obviously, he has the right to have someone in the acting capacity for, I think it's 260 days. But my guess is that, knowing the importance of that job, he's going to want to put forward a nominee that can continue to lead the department on a more permanent basis for the remainder of his first term.
Meanwhile, a lot of questions about what happens next with the Mueller probe and the extent of the cooperation from the White House. Kellyanne Conway was on Fox News earlier and said this.
I can tell you that this president and everyone around him has been nothing but 100% compliant for a year and a half now. Millions and millions of dollars later, months and months later, 1.4 million pieces of paper, 33 plus people having met with or complied with requests from the Mueller team, including the President of the United States.
So we still are waiting to hear more about how this proceeds and what exactly is happening behind closed doors with the president on this probe.
Yeah, I mean, I think people have to remember that there's two aspects to this, right? Which is, one is this fundamental piece of meddling. And you've seen the Mueller team go after upwards of 20 Russian individuals who clearly violated, tried to interfere with our election. And I think every American can agree that anyone, any foreigner or outside actor, state actor or non-state actor that attempts to meddle in our election should be prosecuted and stopped, and that's what's continuing to happen. Then there's the second piece, which is this collusion, and I think, to Kellyanne's point, you've seen a historic level of cooperation with the team over there to provide them both access to personnel and to documents, and so far we've seen nothing. And I think there's a general consensus by all folks that it's time that the cards get laid on the table, that this gets wrapped up, and that if Mr. Mueller has other things that need to happen with respect to outside state or non-state actors that have interfered, then that's fine. But this cloud that's been hanging over the administration needs to come to an end. Mueller's had access to all of the people, all the documents, and it's time that we continue to figure out how to find a resolution to this so that the administration can focus on doing the American people's business.
All right, I want to get to this news that we had breaking in the last hour, Sean, on this judge handing CNN a victory in this bid to restore Jim Acosta's White House press pass. We are just now getting a bit of a statement here from the White House. I want to first get your reaction. I'm going to take a look at this. But get your reaction first to Judge Timothy Kelly ruling that Acosta's First Amendment rights overruled the White House's right to have orderly press conferences.
Well, look, I'm no lawyer, but I'm a little shocked in the sense that I think that there's nothing that prohibited Mr. Acosta from writing on the White House's actions. He was free to continue to write. CNN had multiple reporters that had access to the White House. But I think there's a line between saying that the First Amendment guarantees you to go anywhere and do anything you want and to have reasonable expectations, as the White House has asked for, with respect to his level of professionalism and behavior. And that's what this is about. Obviously, whether he is access or not, he, like so many other journalists around this country, can write about the White House or any subject that they deem necessary or of interest. So I think there's a difference, and I think we're getting lost in grouping every single discussion into the First Amendment. The First Amendment doesn't give you free access to go wherever you please. It gives you the ability to express yourself, for a free press to write things uninhibited, for Congress not to abridge the ability of that press to conduct itself.
Sean, let me just get you to some of the argument here, because we're going to run out of time, and I think it's important to get this in here. The judge, which, by the way, I want to point out was a Trump appointee. He was appointed last year, bipartisan support in the Senate. He also agreed with CNN's argument that the White House did not provide due process. He said that the White House decision-making was so shrouded, and I'm quoting him, shrouded in mystery that the government could not tell me who made the decision. And before I move on, I want to get in the statement from the press secretary, Sarah Sanders, at the White House, is now responding. Today, the court made clear that there is no absolute First Amendment right to access the White House. In response to the court, we will temporarily reinstate the reporter's hard pass. We will also further develop rules and processes to ensure fair and orderly press conferences in the future. There must be decorum at the White House. Do you have any idea what changes they might have in store?
Well, look, here's the answer. I actually believe, as press secretary, I was very liberal with handing out passes to the White House. I believe in a fair and free, robust press, but I think that there should be some level of agreed-upon decorum and professionalism. That is something that bodes well for journalism. It bodes well for just civil discourse, and I don't think that that has anything to do with being able to ask tough questions. There's a difference between to ask what you want and behavior that I think is over the line, disrespectful to the office of the president.
Before I let you go, do you have any idea what Sarah Sanders might be referencing here? Was that ever discussed when you were at the White House, further develop rules and processes to ensure fair and orderly press conferences in the future? What, I mean, do you have any?
No, but I think it may go to the judge's point, which is that there has to be some way of saying, if you violate this, then this is how it will be dealt with. If we all need to agree to the certain protocols that will exist, in terms of, handing off the microphone, et cetera. I think that it behooves all of us at this point, it's sad to say, to actually get some of this down in writing as far as how things will be dealt with if there's concerns, but also an agreed upon set of protocols and behavior that journalists will agree to abide by. That doesn't mean that their questions can get filtered or censored or anything, but I think that there is a level of decorum that is afforded to the office of the presidency, that maybe that they can sit down and work with the White House Correspondents Association to come to some agreement as to what that would look like, and to have some sort of agreed-upon resolution dispute system.
Did you agree with the White House's decision to revoke the pass in the first place?
I think that it would have been better to sit down with the White House Correspondents Association to point out why this behavior is not only disrespectful to the President of the United States, but also to fellow journalists, and see if there could have been some resolution to how to address it, specifically with Mr. Acosta, and then generally going forward. I would have thought that that would have been a better way to keep things, to keep the temperature from getting as high as it did. But again, I think it's hard to make that decision from where I sit, and not having been in the day-to-day as Sarah and some of the others were. Right. So it's easy to say these things without having the context of what had happened before, after, or the preceding days. But I think there's no question that Mr. Acosta's behavior is both disrespectful to the White House and disrespectful to his colleagues, it's not about him having his own show when he's at these press conferences. It's about all of the reporters being able to have an opportunity.
We'll see what happens next. Sean Spicer, thank you for coming on the program.
You bet, Sandra.
All right.